Now we've got our mix sounding really good, it's time to prepare it for mastering, which, as I've said before, and as I'm sure you know, is the very final stage before releasing a track or releasing a song. So we have a bit of a checklist to go through to make sure that we aren't missing anything. So first, make sure that there is no clipping in your song anywhere within any of the chains. So remember to check the channel faders, check the master fader, but also check the plugins as well, and make sure that your gain staging is all in order. Now, before you do any of these changes, I recommend saving your project and then duplicating it. So any changes that you make, you can always revert back to if you don't like them. 2, make sure there is enough headroom on the master fader. So leaving the master fader at 0 at unity gain, your mix should be peaking at the loudest section at about -6 dBFS. If you're a little bit above that, don't worry about it. If you're peaking above -3 dBFS, you might want to start taking some of the channel faders down, making sure to select them all so that it's all brought down in proportion. 3, it's ideal to have about half a second silence at the beginning and at the end of your song. The reason we do this is so that when the first hit or impact of the song starts, the compressor or the limiter in the mastering process will act on it straight away. Whereas if you start on the very first transient, sometimes that can be missed by the compressor. You can either do this in your mix project by just inserting some silence, but if you do that, please make sure that you have got your automation able to be moved as well. There's a setting in whichever door you've got in Ableton Live. It's the little padlock symbol. Make sure that's turned off so that the automation isn't locked when you insert that half a second silence. You could also add this half a second silence at either end in a wave editor after you've exported your song. 4, check the mix at different volumes. So turn your monitoring right down so you can barely hear it, and make sure that you can still hear the most important elements. And similarly, turn it to a comfortable listening level and pump it right up as well, and make sure that everything still sounds good. What I sometimes do is actually put it on and I'll leave the room and I'll listen to it from a room or two away, and I can still hear if things are sounding good or if anything needs tweaking. A couple of common mistakes is that the vocals don't stand out at low volumes, and a newbie mistake is that producers tend to push the hi-hats a bit too loud as well. So just be aware of those things when you're listening to it. 5, and this is an important one, is make sure that the reverbs are actually as low as you can get them whilst still sounding good. And the reason is, when we master our song, because it's all pushed to the maximum in terms of levels, the quieter elements are naturally brought up in the mix. And if our reverb is too loud in the mixdown stage, in the mastering stage, that's going to be pronounced, and we can end up with too much reverb in the mix and it's going to sound muddy and washed out. So make sure that the reverb is as low as you can get it while still doing its job. I mean, don't cut it out, of course, it still has to sound really good. Make sure your mix sounds really good in mono, as I've been banging on throughout the whole process. When we get to the exporting for mastering stage, make sure that you've got your Monomania plugin turned off so you're not exporting in mono. And finally, make sure you've got no mastering effects plugins on the master channel, like limiters or compressors. You can have meters on there, like a spectrum analyzer or a volume meter, which I always do. That's fine because it's not actually coloring the sound at all. And now you're ready to export. So export in either a .wav or a .aiff file format. Please, no MP3s at this stage. That's something that is done after mastering. Choose at least 24-bit sound quality. Sample rate minimum 44.1 kHz. As I've said, I haven't really heard any benefits from going over and above that, but you can if you want. Turn off the dithering. That's something the mastering engineer will do, or you if you are going to be doing the mastering, which you can totally do. And 5, make sure that you've got normalization turned off, because what that will do will bring up everything to be peaking at 0 dBFS, but we don't want that, so make sure normalizing is turned off in the export settings. And there you go, export it, save it as a file name that you are going to recognize. What I tend to do is put brackets mixdown at the end of my file name, just so I know it's a mixdown. Similarly, when I've mastered a song, I will put brackets mastered at the end of it. But do whatever works for you. And next steps is listen to your mix on as many systems as you can and make sure it's working as well as it can on all of them. Now the chances are You might need to take a couple of notes, just jot them down on a piece of paper, then go back into your mix sound, make the tweaks needed, and repeat this export process, and do that as many times as you need to get a mix that you're really sure sounds great. And there you have it, guys. You should now have a mix that you're truly happy with. Now the next stage is of course mastering, but check out the Ninja Mixing Tips module after this, and there are some great little tips and hacks I use for getting the absolute most out of your mix. So be sure to check that module out, and I will see you over there.